Alright, so finally F1 has concluded its 5 days of testing. And to give you some context, this is classified as private test, which basically means that it's off limit to the fans, the media, and also there is barely any official lap times or information or data regarding the testing. But to get started with, this literally threw me off because there were so many pictures and leaked images of how so many media, so many journalists, and even fans tried to sort of roam around the track, be present at the surroundings, and try to get any sort of pictures or videos or informations regarding the test. And I mean the fans, they went as far as flying a helicopter on the track to get some visual images of the testing. Like literally when the day one started, this was huge, the first part of the day, and then F1 got to know about it, and then they had to police more stricter. And also coming to the testing, each teams were allowed only like 3 days of testing out of 5 days. You can select basically any day, and it's just like the 3 days you have to run your car, but not the entire 5 days. So we have got to talk about what basically happened in testing. Who came out on top, what was the end result, what was the takeaway, and yeah, we have got to see some unofficial lap counts and the lap times, but then this is unofficial because this is not an official testing, this was a private testing like I mentioned, and yeah. And let's break down these 5 days of private testing into each single day. So day 1 for all the teams was like, please don't break day. Yeah, I literally mean this because day 1 was a suspense to all the teams. No one knew how their cars perform, and it was just the shakedown of their cars on the track. Not all the 11 teams were available on day 1 of testing. Williams opted out of the testing because of their car build delay program. McLaren had already stated that they are going to run from day 3, and Aston Martin also opted out of the first 2 days of testing because of some curious issues on their car. So on day 1, the first teams out were Mercedes, Red Bull, Racing Bulls, Haas, Alpine, Audi, and Cadillac. And straight away, Mercedes looked scary prepared. They ran a ton of laps. They had no major issues with the reliability, and their drivers George and Kimi rotated the long stints like it was a normal race weekend. Red Bull also came out of garage, and for some context, this is the first season they are running with their exclusive built PU with the help of Ford Motors, of course, and many people were concerned that this is going to be a huge reliability problems for them, but it was not. And the icing on the cake for them, their driver Isaac Hadjar set the fastest time of day 1. But in terms of mechanical platform and aerodynamic platform, their reliability was looking a bit shakier. They had numerous slidings on the track. They also had off-track moments as well, but yeah, these were some unofficial information from various sources. And we have to talk about Haas as well. Haas quietly had one of the best starts of anyone on day 1. They logged a huge mileage without zero drama, which honestly tracks for Haas lately. Fast forward to day 2, and finally we got to see the team in red. Ferrari finally hits the track, and this was Lewis Hamilton's first appearance in the 2026 Ferrari. But also the weather decides to show up. Conditions were in great, there was rain, and the track times went too low. So again, lap times did not really matter. But the major takeaway of day 2 was the Ferrari car looked surprisingly stable. Many sources say that they looked stable, especially in the underbraking, and they performed so well in suspension side of things. And also, the other highlight of the day was Red Bull again. This time it was Hadjar again in the limelight, where in the interchangeable conditions he crashed the car. And this was a major setback for Red Bull. You are in this test, you had got just one car to do the test, and then you managed to crash the car. So now you have to finally wait for the parts to arrive, and that will cause obviously some delays in your testing. And from this, they were clearly on the back foot in terms of mileage. And it's day 3 now, and Mercedes literally starts to flex with its car. Mercedes just kept pounding in on the laps. Long runs, high fuel, low fuel, they were doing everything. Their driver Antonelli in particular impressed a lot of people on the track. And this is not with the headline times. He impressed with how consistent and clean his runs were. And finally, on day 3, we get to see the defending constructor champions, McLaren, on the track. Before I talk anything about McLaren, we have to talk about their livery. They still did not have their official car launch. We don't know what their livery looks like, But the private test livery that they just released with the black color was damn so beautiful. Agree it or not, this livery looks so good on the track. And unfortunately, they're not gonna keep it for the whole season and we get to see some papaya in the future. But McLaren's test was a bit intriguing. It was rather quiet. There was no more information from various different sources on how their test went well. It was very, we know what we are doing, but we are not showing you anything vibes. So at this point, if you're tracking lap counts, Mercedes is already miles ahead. So day 4 arrives and this is where the real pace starts to show up. So now, Mercedes, in the first 3 days of testing, they just focus on mileage, they just focus on reliability, mainly on mileage because of the amount of the laps they do. And coming to day 4, George suddenly decides to go boom. He drops the time of 1:16.4. Now remember, in the first 3 days of testing, the time was oscillating in 1/17ths, beat any team or beat Mercedes themselves. And now the time that Russell set on day 4 was way clear and it was almost 1 second ahead. Now, yes, the track evolution helped, the fuel loads might be lighter or the engine modes might have turned up. But still, this was a statement lap from George. And alongside, Ferrari also started to push harder. At this point of time, Red Bull is still in the garage because of the crash that happened on day 2 and they were still focusing on fixing the car. McLaren ran this day with Oscar Piastri and their mileage was limited because of some fuel system issue in the car. And this was the day where the whispers from the paddock got louder. Mercedes has nailed the 2026 package. And also on day 4, we finally got to see the Adrian Newey designed Aston Martin car on the track. But the running of Aston Martin on day 4 was limited due to some mysterious issue on the car. Not much of information is left out in the media or leaked out, but this is what we know as of now. And now we arrive on the final day of testing. By this time, Mercedes had managed to complete their 3 days of testing and they had wrapped up. The major highlight of day 5 was Ferrari showing up out of nowhere. Initially, in the first 4 days of testing, Ferrari was right up there. They had good stability, they had good reliability. In terms of mileage, they looked good as well. But in terms of performance, they were just there. But on day 5, Lewis Hamilton suddenly decides to show up with the Ferrari car. He sets a mammoth lap time of 1:16.3, which was 1/10 faster than what George had set in the first 4 days of testing. Classic Ferrari move, isn't it? Say nothing, run quietly, and then top the times at the end. Ferrari fans are trolled for the statements like "this year is our year," but hey, Ferrari fans, looking at this year might actually be your year. And also, the time set by Hamilton backs up with the fact that Leclerc looked quick in the first part of the day as well. He had good stability, he had a good mileage, and also his performance he was the 3rd fastest in that lap times. McLaren also ran the final day of testing. They ran the car with Lando and they set the 3rd best time of the overall testing. Cadillac, their first season in Formula 1, they had a reasonable run in terms of mileage, but in terms of performance, they looked a bit slower, which is expected due to their first season in Formula 1, and they are expected also to bring up the developments and catch up the pace with the other teams. We also have to talk about Alpine, where this is the first season they're running with the Mercedes PU and they surprisingly had a good test, both in terms of the PU reliability and the stability with their mechanical and aerodynamical platform. Everything looked good and it was reasonable from what the sources say. Now, looking at the lap count of each teams, this picture absolutely tells us one thing: the bulletproof reliability. Let's just quickly rewind back to 2014, where there was a huge regulation change in terms of power units, and then the total amount of laps with all the teams combined together was just 300. And now, looking at this picture, Mercedes alone has done 500 laps, and this should tell you something. In this brand new era of Formula 1, more laps equals more confidence. This good amount of mileage and also the performance side of things gives them a better confidence and well prepared for the upcoming test in Bahrain. So, what are the final takeaways of this Barcelona private testing? The obvious part is Mercedes looks ridiculously prepared. Ferrari looks surprisingly quick, both in terms of performance and reliability. McLaren are quietly right there, lurking around, but we have to see their full hand on how their car really looks. Red Bull was more of a curious case because they had more questions than answers. Cadillac looked reasonable as well. I have to tell this, Haas and Alpine deserves way more credit, especially on how their test went. Their mileage looked good, their reliability looked good, they had zero issues, and performance based they are right up there as well. And most importantly, and this is my honest feeling as well, 2026 season might just be wide open. So now that this Barcelona test is concluded, I am very much looking forward to the Bahrain test where more things starts to show and more cars decides to run various programs, and that should give us a clue for the picking order. But hey, what do you think about this, and who do you think have already nailed the regulations? Comment down below, do subscribe to the channel and give it a like, because I am gonna be coming up with more exclusive F1 contents and stories and whatever is possible, everything about F1, because this is the sport I love and this is the sport I'm passionate about. Do support me, like the video and subscribe to my channel. Cheers.